So Waver is finally here. We have the lead up event to the Lady Rain's case file event. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about whether or not Waver is good enough to summon for, or whether or not you should be summoning for Waver. And if you enjoy this type of daily FGO content, I upload every single day, so give your boy that like and subscribe. It really does help the channel out more than you know. And we're already 1/5 of the way on our road to 10K, so, help your boy out in that road. If you want to go that extra mile, you can click that join button and become a channel member to further support the channel. But to be honest, I'll settle for a like and subscribe. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into this and let's talk about Waver. Now, his hits don't particularly matter all that much because you're not going to be brave chaining with Waver, or you really shouldn't be brave chaining with Waver. He's a support type servant. So if you're brave chaining with the guy, there's probably something going wrong. Like you got all 5 of his cards on one turn or something. Realistically, you should only be using his arts cards. And coincidentally, his arts cards are the only thing that's really OP about his deck. Like his quick card, buster card, extra card, all of them suck, but that's because you're not going to be using them. His arts cards though have a 1.64% NP charge rate, and because he's a caster, he's got 3 of them, making arch chains going to be very, very easy, allowing him to get up that NP, which is very good, and we'll talk about it later. So realistically, hits don't really matter, arts cards are good, and that's all you're going to be using in his deck anyway. Now looking at his first skill has actually aged very, very well, and you'll notice that about all of Waver's skills, all of them have aged exceptionally well. In the age of Castoria, Scotty, Merlin, all these crazy supports, Waver, who's always been the general support that you can stick in really any team comp and he'll do well, still has some of the best skills in the entire game. And that's something that I would argue, because his first skill, while it only has 2 simple effects, it's increasing one ally's critical damage by 50% for 3 turns and charging their NP gauge by 30%, all on a 5-turn cooldown. This makes this skill very good for farming, as you can give somebody 30% NP. I don't really need to tell you why giving 30% NP to somebody in a farming setup is good, but then in longer events, like say a challenge quest or a boss fight, that 50% critical damage is really, really good. And it might sound a little bit less than like say Merlin or Scotty's, and it is, right? Merlin's giving 100% crit damage, but only for 1 turn. Scotty is giving 100% crit damage, but only to quick cards, whereas Waver is just giving you a flat 50% for 3 turns, and it doesn't matter. You can crit on your arts card, on your buster card, doesn't matter to him. So it's kind of got the best of both worlds in that, yes, it is weaker than both of those, but it's general crit support, and it lasts 3 turns, and it's on a very short cooldown as well, making the skill just very, very solid overall. Now moving on to his second skill, this is actually why I bring Waver instead of say a double Merlin. I'll bring Merlin and Waver because of this skill in particular. It's giving you 30% defense and 500 damage cut, all on a 6-turn cooldown, as well as charging the entire party's NP gauge by 10%. This is really invaluable in say like a buster team or something, because Merlin doesn't actually offer any raw survivability. He gives you HP, and his second skill can protect you for 1 turn. But outside of that, you just gotta be really tanky and you have to live. Waver fixes that problem by giving you a respectable amount of defense and damage cut to really help that defense go the extra mile. And again, he's still supporting by giving the entire party NP. This is especially good if you're running double Waver, which is actually still very, very good, because then you're getting 60% defense, then you're getting 1000 damage cut, which really just makes you unkillable at that point, especially if the targetable servant, your main DPS, actually has their own defensive buff as well. Finally, there's his third skill, which is basically a reverse of the defensive skill, but just with attack. So instead of 30% defense, he's giving 30% attack, which that's kind of insane. I feel like people don't realize how good that is. Just remember that most charisma skills only give 20%, whereas Waver is giving 30% on top of that. He's also giving 500 just raw damage as well, which means the amount of DPS he's actually contributing to your main attacker is actually way higher than just the 30% charisma as well. Because if you didn't know, same buffs add into each other. So say you have 1 charisma buff from like Gilgamesh, and then you have 1 charisma buff from Artoria, their charismas would just add up to like 40% extra attack. They don't multiply into each other. But say I have Gilgamesh and Iskandar on the team. Gilgamesh uses his charisma, Iskandar uses his tactics. That attack buff and that NP damage buff now multiply into each other. because of their different buff types. So the fact that Waver is giving an attack buff and a flat damage buff actually takes that charisma that he's giving and takes it to the next level by actually just having them multiply into each other and giving it to the entire party. That's very good. And again, he's still giving the 10% NP to all allies. Again, like the defense skill with a double Waver setup, this is actually really solid. The reason though that people really don't run double Waver anymore is because characters like Scotty, Castoria, and Merlin really bring out the best in whatever card type they're supporting. So you're losing a lot by not bringing a Scotty to support a quick servant, but you can still run a secondary Waver, right, instead of another Scotty. As someone who does not have Scotty on NA, I can vouch that does actually work pretty well, although in some scenarios it can be a little stressful. But for the most part, it's working out. Merlin plus Waver works very well as well, because again, Waver's kind of providing things that Merlin's not. When Merlin's crit damage runs out, you still at least have Wavers. When you're just sitting there trying to stall for the next skill cooldown to run off, like say Merlin's hero creation or, you know, illusions coming or something, Waver can cover you with his NP and his second skill. And then there's also the fact that Waver's charisma is just way stronger than Merlin's. Aside from Merlin giving 20% NP and Waver only giving 10%, offensively, Waver's skill is just much better. But now we have his NP. Now, Waver's NP I think is really good, specifically as a support, because it doesn't want overcharge. I mean, it's nice if you can get some overcharge on it, but it really doesn't want it. It's not like, say, Castoria or Merlin's NP that are kind of greedy and they would really like to have that overcharge, because Merlin is genning significantly more stars if you give him some overcharge, and that can really help you just crit a lot easier. And Castoria is giving you extra survivability with additional hits of solemn defense if you can give her overcharge, but Waver's only getting stun. He starts off with the 50% chance and it goes up to 80%, but that's never really the reason you're using his NP. You're always going to be using Waver's NP to reduce all enemies' NP gauge by 1 and reduce their defense by 30 to 50% depending on your NP level, which by the way is very good. That is drastically increasing the amount of damage Waver is going to allow the person he's supporting to do. And then he's also helping your survivability by neutering all of their NP gauges by 1. He does a little bit of curse damage, but who cares about that? The fact that the stun chance is what is the only thing that's on overcharge really means Waver can just always be your lead NP, which works twofold, because for one, that means if you're using his NP before your primary DPS's NP, you're lowering the opponent's defense so that they'll hit harder. But then on top of that, he's also going to overcharge their NP, meaning whatever overcharge they have, where they're getting more buster damage, where they're getting more crit damage, getting more quick damage, I don't know, something like that, that's going to help them do even more damage as well. And it's just going to make things run a bit better when you don't have two servants fighting for overcharge. So overall, is Waver worth summoning for? Yes, he's most definitely worth summoning for. However, if you are a free-to-play player or you're very tight on your quartz and you don't like to spend a whole lot, only when it's really necessary, I would say summon for Rain, because she is more limited. I don't think she's quite as good as Waver right now until she gets her buff, but because she's more limited, I would go for her first, and then I would pick up Waver with the 5-star ticket that we're going to be getting next year. I've really been an advocate for people just kind of picking the servant they want from the 5-star ticket. Like, for instance, Waver had a pretty decent banner on the Fate Zero rerun event, so I picked up Waver there. Like, I summoned and I got him there, because that way I could pick up Tamamo with my ticket, because Tamamo is a lot more rare. But in a situation like this, if you have to summon for either Reigns or Waver, you summon for Reigns and pick up Waver on the ticket. It just seems very simple. It just seems like a very obvious thing to do. But let me know in the comments down below. Is that what you guys are going to be planning on doing? Are you going to pick up Waver with your ticket and summon for Reigns? Are you a mad lad and you're going to summon for both? Let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like and subscribe on this video. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace, late guys.